What would you do if I told you that the most dominant pilot of the modern F1 was seen on vacation with the head of the rival team? Chance? Or is something much bigger on the Formula One grill? During the summer pause of the 2025 season, apparently trivial news unleashed a storm of speculation throughout the ecosystem of Formula One. In a sequence of images initially filtered by Toto Wolff, Max Verstappen was captured aboard the Mangusta yacht of Toto Wolff, the head of Mercedes. What did the Red Bull star pilot sharing such an intimate and private moment with the leader of his historical rival team? Was it a simple geographical coincidence? Or was there anything else? The place chosen for this unusual meeting was the coast of Sardinia, one of the favorite destinations of the elite of motoring during the summer break. An area frequented by pilots, managers and personalities of the paddock who are looking for a few days of disconnection. And yet, what should be a moment of relaxation became a key piece of analysis for journalists, experts and fans equally. What two figures of this caliber meet outside the professional frame in a private space suggests something deeper than a simple cordial greeting. In the world of Formula One, coincidences do not exist. The movements, even those not declared, are part of a greater strategy. And this encounter, however informal he presented himself, felt as the first step of a carefully calculated message. On other occasions, false images generated with artificial intelligence had already been viralized in which meetings between pilots and managers were simulated. However, this time there was no margin of doubt. Both reputed means and internal sources of the paddock confirmed the veracity of the material. The fact that the images did not come from an anonymous source in networks, but from a renowned Italian publication, gave it an unquestionable weight. This was not a montage. This was real. And in Formula One, reality has consequences. Verstappen was asked about it days later, and his response tried to demark the matter. I went on vacation with friends and family, and when other people are also there at the same time, that can happen. But that carefree tone, that attempt to erase the importance of the fact, did nothing more than to envive the fire. Because even if the encounter was spontaneous, why accept the invitation to climb to the yacht? Why share time with who has historically been your most strategic adversary outside the asphalt? Moreover, the historical context cannot be ignored. Toto Wolff has been one of the strongest critics of Red Bull's internal policy. He was one of the main drivers of scrutiny against Christian Horner during recent investigations. He has openly declared his intention to restore Mercedes's domain and has made it clear that he is willing to make bold decisions to achieve it. It all began to crack visibly after the scandal that involved Christian Horner. Although he was officially acquitted of the accusations for inappropriate behavior towards an employee, the legal and media process greatly missed his figure. But more importantly, he weakened his authority within the team. What was previously a clear hierarchy became a battle of power between faced sides. On the one hand, Horner trying to hold on to his position with the partial support of the corporate dome of Red Bull. On the other, the Verstappen bloc, headed by his father Jos, and accompanied by influential figures such as Helmut Marko, pressing for a radical change. The friction was made public, with Jos declaring that Max would not tolerate in a toxic environment. He even suggested that his son would leave if the structure was not reformed. The father's words were not an empty threat. Already in 2024, after the operational debacle in key races such as Las Vegas, Verstappen's environment had started conversations with Mercedes. At that time, it was treated as a pressure measure. But now, with Horner out of office since July 9th and with Laurent Mekies assuming as a new CEO, the hypothesis of a real divorce begins to gain strength. The situation is further aggravated with the escape of talents within the technical team. The legendary designer Adrian Newey left the project, tired of internal tensions and political wear. He was followed by essential figures such as Jonathan Wheatley, head of operations, who left an irreplaceable vacuum in the career logistics organization. Red Bull has not only lost speed on the track, he has lost brain in the boxes. And while Max Verstappen continues to perform at the highest level with recent victories in China and Japan, the car does not dominate as before. The RB21 is fast in a straight line, yes, but it shows serious traction deficiencies and slow curve, especially in technical circuits. The development has stagnated, the rivals have reached and in some aspects, surpassed. Internally, engineers are trapped between contradictory versions of what the car needs. Gian Piero Lambiase, Max's track engineer, has been one of the few stability pillars. But even he has forced to mediate in strategic discussions that were previously resolved without friction. As if that were not enough, Helmut Marko recently admitted that they are afraid of not being able to retain Max if they fail to offer him a winning car in the coming months. Statements that do not sound to self-confidence but a public plea. Red Bull, for the first time since his rise in 2009, feels that the clock runs against him. And then, in the midst of this political, technical, and emotional hurricane, a photograph of Max Verstappen appears relaxed, smiling, talking with Toto Wolff. You do not have to be an expert in signal reading to understand the message that is implicitly launched the entire paddock. Max has options, and is willing to explore them. Red Bull no longer controls the future. He negotiates it every day. What makes this episode in Sardinia much more than a summer anecdote is not only the technical context or the institutional drama in Red Bull, but the underground history that unites and at the same time separates Max Verstappen and Toto Wolff for almost a decade. Because if one scratches the surface of this seemingly casual image, what appears is not a gesture of courtesy, but a master movement within a power of power that has begun to accelerate. Toto Wolff is not a character who does something without calculating future implications. From the departure of Lewis Hamilton to Ferrari, Mercedes has entered a reconstruction stage. George Russell has assumed the role of leading pilot, and Kimi Antonelli, although talented, is still a formation project. Toto knows that if he wants to restore the lost glory, he needs a dominant figure, a new cornerstone. And Max Verstappen is not simply the best pilot available. It is, at this time, the only pilot who could immediately transform Mercedes into a candidate for the title without the car having to be perfect. Wolff already tried approaches in the past, and it is known that he has maintained a cordial relationship with the surrounding environment. But what I had never achieved was a public opportunity, legitimized by the image, in which it could show closeness with Max without raising direct suspicions of betrayal. Until now. This image in Sardinia gave him that. And more. From Mercedes' point of view, timing is perfect. The 2025 season is still in its first half. Red Bull is disorganized, McLaren Liadra, Ferrari reinvents Hamilton, and Mercedes needs to redefine his medium-term course. To show with Verstappen is not just a declaration of intentions. It is also a notice to the rest of the paddock that they are still active in the power market, that are not resigned to the role of third actor, and that they are willing to intervene in the battle for the future of F1. On the Max Verstappen side, there is also a strategic dimension that cannot be ignored. Getting to that yacht was not simply accepting a friendly invitation. It was to put pressure on his own team. At the moment it is known that Red Bull is going through a critical stage and is in full restructuring, being seen with Toto Wolff as a deterrence. It is putting Milton Keynes' directive on alert. Is to remind you that your loyalty is conditioned to performance. That his contract is not an eternal lock, but an alliance that can dissolve if there are no results at height. Max doesn't need to say anything. You just need to be there. That is the difference between a pilot negotiating his future and a world champion moving the dashboard pieces. Because it's not simply about changing equipment. It's about changing the balance of power. In this equation, an emotional factor also enters. Verstappen, since he debuted, has been the Red Bull symbol. But that symbol has been deteriorated by strategic errors, by internal conflicts, and for the loss of key figures that accompanied him since his ascent. The team that formed is no longer the same. And he knows. It is not going to be nostalgia. It will stay or go depending exclusively on what you can win. To this is added an even stronger symbolic dimension, reputation. For Max, going from Red Bull to Mercedes would be a betrayal for many. But it would also be the final blow to its invincible pilot narrative. Win with a different team, as Schumacher did with Ferrari or Hamilton with Mercedes, would turn his legacy into an even more imposing story, and would consolidate it not only as the champion of an era, but as the pilot who redefined two. This moment, apparently harmless, occurs at the most fragile moment of the modern era of Red Bull. The structure that for years was synonymous with innovation, efficacy, and results, today is fractured in the deepest. The Horner case, the loss of key technical figures, the performance drop, and the growing internal tension have transformed what was a stability model in a field of uncertainty. Max knows, and feel it. Verstappen is an absolute competitor. He is not interested in transition processes or slow reconstructions. Your DNA is designed for constant victory. If Red Bull cannot guarantee that scenario, he will look for another structure that does. Not by betrayal, but out of necessity. And this is where the figure of Toto Wolff appears as more than a Mercedes director. He is the architect of a project in full reconfiguration, which needs a pillar as Verstappen to dominate again. His appearance with Max not only activates rumors, it also activates a real, tangible, strategic possibility. And he does it with the confidence of those who have rebuilt empires before. This episode will not be forgotten, because even if neither of them has said it publicly, everyone has understood. The possibility that Max Verstappen and Mercedes' unanimous forces is no longer a media fantasy. It is a real hypothesis in development and in the hands of the circumstances that are developed in the coming weeks. Each result, each technical decision, every word of Helmut Marko or Laurent Mekies will be able to approach or remove that alliance. But there is something that is already clear. Max has put its conditions. And now it is Red Bull who must respond. The narrative no longer controls. He shares it. And if it is not up to the story that your pilot wants to write, it will be another who provides the pen.